We're still, and I think rightly so, in Genesis chapter 3. We've really just begun exploring this, and there's so much here. Genesis chapter 3, so much here for us to take in and think about and consider it. So we begin here in chapter 3, and we're introduced in verse 1 to the serpent, and he introduces himself, not fully, but he introduces himself in conversation with the woman. And he says in verse 1, "Has God indeed said, 'You shall not eat of every tree of the garden'?" And of course, we're reading Genesis chapter 3, having already read Genesis 1 and 2, and seeing the wonderful provision that God has given to Adam and Eve, and this marvelous system that we call nature. God began that, and the unfolding of that, the natural processes that are still very much at work today. We see Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 2, and we see that God places them in the Garden of Eden, and there are two trees in that garden that God has intentionally placed in that garden. The tree of life, and then there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life, they can eat of that tree, just as they eat of all the trees that God has created. But then there's that one tree, and God says, "I don't want you to eat of that tree. The day that you eat of that tree, that day you will surely die." And that is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Moses doesn't go into a lot of details as to what that tree is and what it means to eat of it. God told them, "You're going to die if you eat that tree." And so that was to be a warning to them. That was to caution them. And then we come to Genesis chapter 3, and we see the beginning of the process where Adam and Eve are going to eat of that tree, and things are going to come unraveled as far as God's relationship with them. God's blessings, some of those blessings are going to be pulled back. And we're going to see the beginning of consequences, not only for Adam and Eve, but for you and me as well. Okay? We're introduced to Satan here, although, as we've pointed out, he's not specifically referred to as Satan. He is referred to throughout Genesis chapter 3 as the serpent. But we know that he's Satan because elsewhere in Scripture, the serpent that shows up here is identified with the devil later on. Okay, so we know who this is, and so it helps to know a lot about the Bible, and then be able to go back and read and see what's up with that. And we have so many of our questions answered by reading the rest of the Bible. So many of our questions about Genesis chapter 3. So the serpent says to the woman, "Has God indeed said, 'You shall not eat of every tree of the garden'?" And we explored that quite a bit last time, the time before. And the woman said to the serpent, verses 2 and 3, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden." I wish she had said of all the trees of the garden, okay? But she didn't, every tree. She just said, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden." And because she could have elaborated on the abundance of that, because God did. God said, "I've given you all of this, every tree you may eat of." But of the fruit of the tree, this is the negative part of her statement, but of the tree, of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, "You shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die." And we explored a little bit last time about everything is accurate about that, except "nor shall you touch it." And whether it was right or not for her to say that, it would have been wrong for her to say, "God said," except, just a little bit of pause here, we don't know all that God has said. We don't know all that God has said. However, what is recorded in Genesis chapter 2 about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, there was caution there, "Do not eat of this tree." It's possible that God said, "I don't want you to touch it either." It's possible he could have said that. It is possible that Adam, being her leader and her head, said to her, but we don't know. I'm just saying it's possible that he could have said, I don't even think we should touch it. I don't even think we should touch it. Because you can kind of see Adam. If he's doing his job, he might say something like that. Regardless, she replies to the serpent, whom she doesn't recognize as we would, reading this, that this is the devil, that this is Satan. We don't know what cautions are going on in her mind. We know that she is going to admit to being deceived. Paul, the apostle, is going to tell us that when Eve ate of this tree, she was deceived. Okay? So the Bible is very clear that the woman, Eve, is being deceived, okay, in this process. I think it was Stacy who brought up last week, and I think it was a very good comment, that it seems in verse 1 that when he asks her this question, the serpent asks the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? That he could very well have just been testing her knowledge, testing what she knows. Satan, you can see him asking a question, and he knows, well, there's only a couple of possible answers that she can give to this question. Okay? She's going to say, no, I don't know, or I don't remember what God said about that. I don't remember that. You can imagine a child, say, well, I don't remember that. I don't remember you saying that, whether they do or not. She could have said that. Or she could have said what she said here. And whatever answer she gave, clearly the serpent is wanting to engage with her. And because he's asking her a question, he does want her to know, wants to know, what does she know really? And that will help him in his strategy to know what to say next. Okay? He knows what to say next. I'm assuming he knows what to say next. Verse 4. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. Now, what strikes you about his statement to her in verse 4? What strikes you about that? You shall not surely die. Debbie? Okay. We know that that's where he's going to take this along for sure. That God's not being he's not beyond the up and up here. Jerry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just
okay.
said
Okay.
like, well,
yeah.
No, you will not. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yeah, he didn't say, well, are you really sure about that? Are you really sure? Let me go with Doug and then Trenton. Doug? Yeah. Speaks kind of like what Jerry was saying there too about he kind of says this with authority. Let me tell you, no, you're not going to die. Just remove that thought out of your mind. Yeah, Trenton. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's you done? Very good. Very good. Yeah, he does. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. He knew what the devil had said, and he's engaging with her, and she knows what God had said, or rather, the serpent knew what God had said, and she knows what God has said, but he says it emphatically. God says it emphatically. You will surely die. And Eve says, well, lest you die, okay? And Satan goes back and says, you will not surely die. What strikes me immediately about that is that it is the opposite of what God said. It's the opposite. I mean, it's boldly the opposite. God said, you will surely die. Satan says, you will not surely die. We need to be very aware of this. Sometimes Satan slips in his deceptions and everything under cover of darkness and subtle and all of this. But listen, a lot of the wrong things, the sin, the temptation that's out there in the world, it's very bold. And it flies directly in the face of what God has said. Steve. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. The devil will come directly. Yeah. Yeah. Leading us down the wrong road. And he says exactly the opposite of what God says. This is a bold thing for him to do. This is bold. And Eve could have said, no, that's not right. That's not what God said. You're saying exactly the opposite of what I know God has said. Doesn't do that. Roger and then Dick. Well, I don't know about our bodies, but he certainly. We've had this discussion a little bit, and I'll just summarize that. And at the end of Genesis chapter 1, God looks at everything He's made, and behold, it's very good. And everything that God does is good. It's good. It's good. It's very good. Okay, and now Satan is introducing the idea of things are not as good, Eve, as you might think. And, because God has given you a lot, but He's holding back from you. And that's not good. It's not good that God holds back. That's his suggestion. Let me, Dick and then Bill.
Did he really have good physical death?
Well,
The other part is Satan
mm-hmm. Possibly, but possibly. I'm going to go with the idea, and I may be wrong about this, but I'm going to go with the idea that she knew what physical death was, and possibly knew what spiritual death was. Even if it's okay for us to even separate the two, I don't know that we can separate the two, at least in this situation, because we're going to see both physical death and spiritual death start to unfold here. Okay, so I'm not sure, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me like God probably supplied them with this bit of information. Tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't want you to eat of that. The day that you eat of that, you will surely die. And they would have naturally said, well, what does that mean? What does that mean, God? And God may have answered those questions because it helps. And the communication process if everybody's using the same language. And it would mean very important for them to know what that meant to die. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they probably knew, but like a lot of things God told them, and like a lot of things God tells us, He tells us He doesn't want us to experience it. He tells us, but He doesn't want us. That's why in our Bible classes, when we bring our children to our Bible classes, you realize everything that can go wrong with mankind is in the Bible. And this is why we have our children in Bible classes. This is why we teach them the Bible at home, because everything that they are going to encounter out there in the world is right there in the Bible. And it's not in the Bible so that we will experience sin. It's there so that we will have knowledge and we will know what to be alert about, and alert for. And we have Bible classes and we talk with our children about Bible so that they won't go out and experiment. Look, this is what happened to David. Or this is what happened to Samson. Or this is what happened to Solomon. Look at all the mistakes that he made. And son, the Proverbs, son, listen to the law of your father. Listen to the law of your mother. Mother and father teaching your children the Word of God so that your children won't go out and make those mistakes. Okay? Sometimes when you make the mistakes, the sins that the Bible tells you, sometimes you don't survive it. No one commits the sins that are discussed in the Bible and gets off untainted. We are always a little tainted, at least, by the sin that we experience. Better to listen carefully to mom and dad, listen carefully to our teachers who love us and care for us, listen to those Bible lessons and put them into practice. And that's what Eve should have done, and that's what Adam should have done. He should have said, God said this, and so we're not going to go down that road. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He cornered her alone to do that. I get her alone. Now, if she was with Adam,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I may disagree with that just a little bit. Just a little bit. I agree with the overall principle that when we are together and we're encouraging one another and all that, that helps us. That helps us. Whether Adam was with her or not, I don't think that's clear. Okay, this is what I'm going to say. I'm not saying, because later on it's going to say that she gave to Adam who was with her. Now that could mean that he's just somewhere else in the garden and she has to go find him. Could mean that. And that would be with her. Okay? Could be that he's standing right there. Okay? Now, I feel, okay, so that's all it is. It's my feeling, okay, that he is close by. I don't think he's standing next to her, and the reason why I think that's true is because he said to the woman, it doesn't say in verse 1 that he said to the woman and the man. It doesn't say he said to the woman. So probably, but I can't say this with certainty, probably she is separated from Adam to some degree. He's maybe 10 feet away, maybe 100 yards away. We don't know. We don't know. He's with her in the garden. He hasn't fled the scene. He's with her. The text says this, he's with her. But how close, we don't know. Whether he's within earshot, we don't know. Stacy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Very good. You probably all didn't hear that, and I'm not going to be able to correctly represent that, but cognitive dissonance, okay? It's a way for us to have these conflicting ideas and thoughts, and Satan offers us a way to kind of put these two together. Because, really, God says don't do that, and you can look at that and say, nah, I shouldn't do that. I know I shouldn't. And Satan says, well, one time will be okay. One time, you can do it one time, and it'll be okay, and nobody will know, and then he allows us, or he persuades us to put those two ideas together where we can have our cake and eat it too, right? Somebody else. Go ahead, Bill. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to go with the idea that it is a tree. It is a tree. In Revelation, actual tree, I don't know. River of life, I don't know. Other than there's symbolism there. Whatever it represents, if it's symbolism, then it represents supply, resource, blessings of God, eternal blessings of God, river of life. We can imagine that. We can see that in our minds, what that might look like. But heaven's probably going to be better than a river scene or a beautiful tree. Heaven's going to be better than that. So anyway, here I'm going to go with the actual tree and not representatives. But go ahead, Susan. Sorry. Okay. Mhm. 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 Oh, sure. Mhm. 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 You're not due to die. Okay. Mhm. Whatever. I think I have. Mm. Okay. Okay. Um, let me see here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You're not due to die, or yeah. This has been called, as you know, by many preachers, the knot in the devil's tie. Okay, or the knot in the devil's tail, and that's appropriate. Um, I didn't, Jerry. I didn't. I'm not saying that I disagreed with you because, in principle, you're correct. I don't know whether they were together or not. I don't know. It's possible that they were, um, but it's also possible that they were some distance apart. We don't know, but we know that they're all in the garden. Okay, all three of these creatures of God are in the garden. See, I believe that yeah, yeah. I would take the position that they do have that relationship. Yeah, he is the head of her, and that is demonstrated by the fact that he names the animals. He is obviously superior to them, and he has this responsibility to, and he names her. He gives her a name. Yeah, but no, I think that in my view, I think the case could be made that he is the head of her at this point. And later, God is going to reiterate that. Adam, I want you to do your job, basically. I want you to do your job. You are the head of your wife, all right? Now, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be trouble in the relationship as a result of that. But, Eve's going to be feeling certain things, and you're going to be feeling certain things, but you maintain your headship. That's my view of this, that he is created to be her head. She's named after him, by the way, and he's not named after her. And all of this is indicative of God creating him first for a reason. And part of that reason, I think, is to lead her. And when they have children, because God clearly has in mind that they're going to have children, he's going to lead the whole family. Okay? And all that goes back to my if I'm writing a commentary on this, one of the things I'm going to say in that commentary is Adam didn't do his job. Adam did not do his job. This is what's happening. And in the larger sense, I'm going to go ahead and project this. This is what's wrong with our world today. Men aren't doing their job. Hey, there's a lot of criticism for women too, okay? But largely speaking, and go ahead and throw stones if you want to, but largely speaking, men are not doing their job. If men would get their act together, okay? I'm not talking about you guys, but overall, if men would get their act together, I think women and children would follow that leadership. Overall, there'll be women and there'll be children to buck the system, and there are going to be men that are not going to do that either. But overall, if you can get men on board following the Lord, you're moving in the right direction. All of society will be moving in the right direction. Go ahead, Roger. True. Yeah, good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. That's true. Mhm. It's interesting that we're studying this not as reading this for the first time, but all of you guys have read this multiple times before. You all have so many comments to make, which shows to me you know how important this is. And every line and every word of this conjures up thoughts of things that we need to talk about. And that is the power of Genesis chapter 3, one of the great chapters of the Bible, truly one of the great chapters of the Bible. So he said, "You will not surely die." A bold, bold thing for him to say. You would think that God would say, all right, the devil is directly contradicting me. I'm going to get rid of him now. But he doesn't do that because God knew ahead of time that all of this was going to unfold this way. And he's giving Adam and Eve an opportunity, as he gives all of us, the opportunity to face the devil and fight him or flee from him, resist him, okay? He's giving us, we all have that opportunity, and you need to tell your kids that and your grandkids that. The day is coming, you're going to have to face the devil, like Adam and Eve faced him, and you're going to have to choose. And I'm giving you the information that you need right now so you can make a good choice, a wise choice. Carl, please. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, that happens immediately. Yeah, that happens immediately for sure, okay? But as you all know, physical death is beginning here as well. It's beginning here. The process of it, okay? And in that way, God is correct. The day you eat of it, you shall surely die. The process of death and decay is beginning, okay? But not yet, not yet. We haven't gotten there yet, okay? She hadn't eaten of the fruit of the tree yet. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. Isn't it great to have someone tell us what God knows, okay? What God knows, okay? Another bold thing. Satan is very bold, okay? He's very bold. He contradicts God to begin with, and then he's going to tell us what God knows and what God is thinking about and all that. You know, hey, let's leave it up to God to tell us what he knows and what he's thinking about. We don't need someone who is in the midst of contradicting God to tell us about God. By the way, all this is theological. Theology is life, okay? What you know about God, what you understand about God, and all that, extremely important in how we react to the devil and how we react to life. There are some things you can know that God knows, and there are some things that you can know, obviously, about what God has said. And this woman, she had all of that available to her. She knew what God had said, and to the degree that God had revealed it to her, she knew what God knew. Okay? Not all that he knew, but that's really part of the temptation. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. Okay? What he should have said was, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, you will surely die. But he doesn't say that. He says the opposite. Actually, he says, it's beneficial to you to eat of this tree. Now, God says it's not to your benefit to do it, but the devil is saying, actually, there's a blessing that's going to come to your way. You're actually going to get something. Your eyes are going to be open, suggesting to Eve that God has put some kind of blinders on her, okay? That God is clouding their vision, that they can't really see clearly. And that's what this means. Your eyes will be opened, right? I mean, physically, their eyes are open. But Satan is saying, God knows that if you do this, your eyes will really be opened. And that means you'll have understanding that you didn't have before, right? Bill, go ahead. Our time is approaching. Yeah. They didn't know what? Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an interesting thing that you're really saying there, because that's going to be the first thing that occurs to them, that disturbs them after they eat, is that they are naked, and they actually were naked before. Okay, so what's the difference between them being actually naked before they eat of the tree, and then they ate of the tree, and now their eyes are opened? What is it that what changed? What changed in their mentality between those two things? Because physically speaking, nothing has changed. You were going to say something? Go ahead, Jerry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Maybe also, and our time is up here, maybe also they're able to put things together. I don't think, I don't think Adam and Eve, they're not cave dwellers. They're not cave men and women. I think they're intelligent, and they have all the intelligence that you and I have, if not more so. Okay, if not more so. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they see their nakedness before, and they understand what God wants us to do and what all that means. And He's already told them, I want you to reproduce and all that. So they have an understanding of something regarding their nakedness. But afterwards, they have another view, another thinking in regard to their nakedness. And it could be vulnerability. It could be the ability to think and realize that this has the potential for a lot of things. There's this potential here, and the sinful mind. Think about yourself here, and think about the world. The sinful mind thinks about potentiality, and thinks about, I've got these resources, right? What can I do with those resources? The godly mind will say, I have these resources and I'm going to serve God. The ungodly mind will say, I've got these resources that God has given me, I'm going to do something else. And maybe they had a vision, a premonition of potentiality here in the wrong direction. Go ahead, Bill. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And it could be that. Could just be, because it is going to talk that they are ashamed. They're ashamed. There's something about their nakedness now that causes shame that before wasn't the case. All right, good place to stop. Wow, you guys are really participating, and I appreciate that very, very much. There's so much to be said, so much to be considered here. And guess what? We'll pick up next week where we left off, and let's get ready for a time of worship.